Hello everyone, welcome back, Movie Insight Recaps. Today I will show you a science fiction, action, film from 2018, titled Upgrade. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the near future, artificial intelligence is everywhere around us. It does the house chores and drives the cars. However, Gray is old school and works as a mechanic refurbishing classic models. He's happily married to a chef who works for a company called Cobalt that makes human-computer augmentations. One afternoon, Gray asks Asha to come with him to deliver a finished job. Gray shows Asha two giant rocks that can be found outside the city, and right underneath them, there's a corridor that takes them to the exotic home of Gray's friend Iran, a renowned tech innovator. Iran takes the chance to show them his latest invention. It's a microchip called STEM, the most advanced AI to date. Asha is very impressed, but Gray still thinks there are things people can do better than machines. On their journey back, Asha tries to get frisky with Gray in her car since the AI is driving. Anyway, Dark gets diverted when he sees the vehicle isn't bringing them back home. Rather, it's taking them to the obscure area Dim experienced childhood in. They attempt to request that the vehicle right its course and to assume control over it with manual control. However, nothing works. Suddenly, the car begins gaining speed and crashes against some trash that makes it flip. At that moment, a gang of criminals led by Fisk shows up and takes them out of the car as a police drone arrives and records everything. Fisk immediately kills Asha, and the others hold Gray down to shoot at the back of his neck, causing him to be unable to move. Then the gang runs away as the police arrive to take Gray to the hospital, where he learns he's now quadriplegic. The only body part he can move is his head. 3 months later, Gray's mother Pamela takes him back to his house in a modern wheelchair that he can handle himself. The house has also been renovated to include even more robotic pieces that will do anything Gray needs. Technically, Pamela doesn't need to be here, but she stays to take good care of Gray and offer comfort. One afternoon while she's cutting his beard, Gray finally can't hold it anymore and has a complete breakdown. Sometime later, Pamela and Gray meet with Detective Cortez at the station. Cortez explains criminals have ways to hide their faces from the drones, so they haven't been able to identify the gang yet. She'll investigate this case thoroughly though and tells Gray he can help. However, Gray is frustrated with the cops being useless as usual and is rude to her before pointing out he can't help because he's an invalid. Later at night, Dim's downturn incurs significant damage, and when he asks the PC for his medication, he imagines the shot didn't work so the automated arm will go too far him. His arrangement to end things flops however in light of the fact that the robots quickly require a rescue vehicle. Sometime later, Iran visits Gray at the hospital to offer him a solution. He can install STEM in Gray's spinal cord to help him move again. Gray points out he doesn't want to restart his life, and Iran responds this isn't what Asha would have wanted. Gray changes his mind and accepts Iran's proposition. The procedure is done at Iran's home and it doesn't take long. As soon as they're done, they test Gray's legs, but he can't feel it when they touch him. Iran isn't too worried because the body may take time to adapt to a foreign object. But seconds later, Gray is moving his arms. Next, he tries to walk, and Gray is amazed by the fact he doesn't even need the crutches. Afterward, Iran makes Gray sign a confidentiality agreement, because his technology hasn't been approved by the government yet. Gray wonders who is moving his limbs and Iran explains Gray is the one in control. STEM just works in service for his brain. After running some tests, Gray's allowed to return home, where he finds a box sent by Cortez with a bunch of files about the case. While studying the recording of the murder, Gray suddenly hears a voice and discovers it's STEM. At first, Gray thinks he's going crazy, but STEM assures him it's just part of its programming. Nobody else will be able to hear it because it sends sound waves directly to his eardrums. It can't read minds though. It can only know what Gray wants when he says it aloud. STEM brings up that the man that fired Asha doesn't have a firearm in his grasp, meaning the person must have had a weapon embedded in his body. One of the other gangsters has a tattoo on his wrist which isn't recognizable to the unaided eye, however STEM can see it. Gray gives it permission to take control of his arm and STEM draws the tattoo on a piece of paper, allowing Gray to identify it as a military marking. Using Gray's eyes, STEM also scans the tattoo and learns it belongs to a guy named Cirque, even obtaining his address in the process. Gray wants to call Cortez and give her this information, but STEM reminds him he isn't allowed to talk about his chip, so first he needs to find some proper evidence. The next day, Gray revisits his old neighborhood while still using his wheelchair to keep up his secret. After the criminal leaves his house, Gray leaves the chair outside and breaks into the house as STEM gives him tips on how to investigate. They access the guy's messages on his digital table and discover a bar called Old Bones keeps being mentioned, which STEM can't find online because it's off the grid. There aren't any other clues in the messages, so Gray keeps looking around the house. At that moment, Cirque returns home. Gray tries to hide but Cirque sees him in the mirror and attacks him. Gray doesn't know how to defend himself against this beating, so STEM asks for permission to take control of Gray's body. Gray grants it and to his surprise, his body begins moving on its own, using incredible moves to easily overpower Cirque. The fight moves into the kitchen and STEM grabs plates to hit Cirque, causing Cirque to respond by grabbing a knife. STEM makes Dim get the blade and wounds Cirque in his back, which Dim believes it's going too far. Anyway, STEM couldn't care less and recovers the blade to kill Cirque in a savage manner. Then, at that point, Stem gives Dim back control of his body, and Dark promptly hurls since he can't really accept that he in fact killed somebody. He's on the edge of a breakdown, but Stem reminds him to get rid of all his fingerprints before the police come. Stem has a recording of everything that happened, meaning it'll be easy to find everything Gray touched. The next day, Iran makes Gray come to his house to scold him for what he did. His computer keeps track of Stem's location because it's expensive technology he could be arrested for, and Gray can't go out there to play vigilante when he promised to keep the secret. Gray replies that Iran kept secrets from him first and tells him about Stem talking, which Iran is shocked to hear. Shaken by the news, Iran asks Gray to be a perfect patient and not to confuse Stem with weird activities. Meanwhile, Cirque's body arrives at the police morgue and Cortez learns he had weapon modifications inside his arm and lots of computer implants all over his body in an amount the doctor never saw before. The forensic team also found a boot print on the front porch and they've identified it as engine grease. Later, Cortez checks the security cameras near Cirque's home and discovers Gray going down the street in his wheelchair. Cortez places Dim's name in the PC as a potential suspect, yet the artificial intelligence disposes of him as contrary. At night, Cortez visits Dim and requests to purchase his exemplary vehicle, yet she's shocked to hear he won't sell it regardless of whether he can't drive it any longer. She additionally checks Dim's boots, which Stem takes note. Then Cortez admits she does have news about the case. One of the people she had interrogated when the crime happened showed up dead yesterday. With Stem guiding him to help him lie, Gray pretends he doesn't know anything about it, and when Cortez mentions she saw him on the camera, Gray tells her he was around gathering information because he decided he did want to help after all. After Cortez is gone, Gray tells Stem he wants to keep investigating but without killing anyone else. Stem points out that the old bones is their next logical step. But since the bar is off the grid, it can't hack into their systems for clues, so Gray will have to go there in person. Gray decides to go to the bar while staying in his wheelchair to avoid suspicion. After getting some help with a drink, Gray talks to everyone in the bar, asking for anyone that knows Cirque or the gang involved in the murder of his wife. Talon comes forward and takes Gray's phone so he can't call the police, but Gray taunts him by mentioning he killed Cirque. Talon falls for it and drags Gray to the bathroom with some of his men while Iran realizes Gray isn't home and begins tracking down Stem. In the bar bathroom, Talon tosses Gray on the floor and points out that if Gray really killed Cirque, then he's faking his disability. Stem turns off Gray's pain receptors right before Talon starts poking Gray's body with his knife to find where he can be hurt. In the end, his blade comes to Dark's head and Dim notification Talon's hand likewise has openings for a weapon in bed. Talon concedes he was essential for the gathering that killed Asha, making an enraged Dim allow Stem to take over once more. Stem pounds every one of the folks with no trouble then, at that point, bounces on top of Talon to stick him to the floor. Gray asks for information, but since Talon refuses to speak, Stem makes Gray grab the knife and hurt Talon until he's ready to talk. Disgusted but determined, Gray asks his questions again, and Talon explains that Night the gang had been hired for a special job. Talon also mentions the name Fisk. Gray doesn't understand who would want to kill Asha, and Stem notices Talon's implants come from Asha's company Cobalt. At that moment, Stem senses that Iran is trying to track him, and Gray begins arguing with it over what to do next. Stem points out that if Iran shuts the chip down remotely, Gray won't be able to walk and Iran will send his security guards to retrieve him. They need to find a hacker that will shut down Stem's input system, and Stem has already found one called Jamie that lives nearby. Stem also makes Gray grab Talon's gun and a pen so Gray can write down Stem's code on his arm. Then Gray leaves the bar, and Stem tells him to leave the wheelchair because it'll slow him down, so a fake invalid takes the chance to steal it. A moment later, Gray finds Jamie's building, but since Iran is already starting to shut Stem down, he has to slowly drag his body up the stairs because little by little his limbs stop working. Meanwhile at the bar, Fisk and his men find Talon's body. Fisk uses his special implants to see what Talon saw and learns of Jamie's address because Gray had been talking to Stem aloud. Then Fisk calls the barkeep out in light of the fact that he never really helped his kin. The barkeep doesn't need inconvenience and requests that they leave while pointing his weapon at them, so Fisk draws nearer and professes to wheeze. The drops he expels from his mouth have a nanomachine that helps into the barkeep's body through his nose and kills him from within. Back to Gray. He manages to reach the right apartment and knocks right before Stem is shut down. Jamie sees the money and accepts to help Gray using the code he wrote his arm. Gray notices this apartment is used by VR addicts that never leave the virtual world, and he mentions he can't understand wanting to live in a fake reality. After a few minutes of work, Jamie manages to remove Stem's input guards, but it'll take a few moments for the chip to reboot. At that moment, Jamie notices Fisk and his right hand on the building's security cameras and runs away. Iran's guards also arrive at the building as Gray slowly begins to move again. For some reason, he can see Asha standing in the room, but the illusion is broken when Fisk and his companion finally find him. Suddenly, Stem finally speaks again and Gray lets it take over to hit Fisk and run away. Fisk's companion goes after him while he scans the elevator to discover Iran's guards, so he uses his weapon implant to kill them. Stem guides Gray through the building to help him find the fire escape and he reaches the roof with the criminal right behind him. Since he can't keep on running, Stem takes over and kills the guy with his own weapon. By the time Fisk comes to the roof too, Gray's already gone. Dark shows up at his home in the first part of the day and starts contending with Stem on the best way to continue, just to interfere with himself when he finds Pamela is there. He must choose the option to educate her concerning the activity, requesting that she stay discreet in the event that she doesn't need her child captured. Pamela is happy to keep her mouth shut because now she can hold Gray's hand again. Meanwhile, Aaron's scared of what will happen now that he lost contact with Stem. After taking a good nap, Gray wakes up and is shocked to find Asha next to his bed. Unfortunately, it's just a dream, but Gray worries anyway because it didn't feel like a regular dream. At that moment, Pamela announces Cortez came to talk to him, so Gray gets in bed and pretends he can't move. Cortez informs them that they found the wheelchair near a crime scene, and Gray responds he had been following a potential suspect but got assaulted. Thankfully, some witnesses put him in an auto taxi and sent him home. Cortez is skeptical, and while she mentions Gray could hire someone to do the killing for him, she secretly touches Gray's jacket. Gray continues to deny any involvement and Cortez leaves the house, but she actually stays outside in her car because she planted a microphone in Gray's jacket. Now Cortez can hear Gray's side of his current argument with Stem. Gray wants to stop this madness, but Stem points out that if they don't hunt down Fisk, he'll show up to kill Gray. Out of nowhere, Dark acknowledges he can't move, and Stem at last makes sense of what the programmer did. By eliminating Stem's feedback framework, Aaron can't arrive at the chip, yet neither can Dim. Presently, Stem can assume control over the body at whatever point he needs without requiring Dark's authorization. Then, at that point, Stem causes Dark to get dressed and get the weapon so they can go get Fisk. Pamela catches him red-handed and asks him what's going on since she also saw the blood on his clothes. All this is heard by Cortez. Gray ignores her, saying he doesn't have a choice, and he leaves in his car. Cortez follows him. In the middle of the road, Gray finds the microphone in his pocket and throws it away. Stem couldn't detect it because it's an old model and doesn't have digital parts in it. They begin to drive faster because they can guess Cortez must be close, and Cortez decides to chase them properly, turning on the sirens. Gray asks Stem to hack her car, but Cortez drives an old model without an AI and Stem can't access it. When Cortez gets too close, Stem hacks into a random auto car and makes it crash against her. Cortez is alive and well, but she can't follow them anymore. Moments later, Cortez goes to Gray's house and asks Pamela to tell her everything she knows. Meanwhile, Fisk arrives at his house and Gray surprises him from behind, holding him at gunpoint. Fisk knows about Gray's chip and explains they're the same, just a couple of lab rats. He doesn't think he ruined Gray's life. In fact, Fisk thinks he's given Gray a gift by making him one of the upgraded. Gray wants to know why Cobalt sent him to kill Asha, but Fisk explains he isn't working for Cobalt. The job wasn't Asha. The occupation was to extreme Dark's spine with a clinical instrument, and Asha had just been a piece additional cash. Dark gets enraged and Fisk exploits that to stir up some dust. Stem uses the moves it knows, but Fisk has more experience and can read what Gray will do next. After lots of struggle, Fisk corners Gray against the wall and is about to shoot him, but Gray distracts him by bringing up Cirque. Because of the surnames, Gray guesses he was Fisk's brother and begins describing in detail how he killed him. Now it's Fisk who gets emotional and tries to punch Gray, so Gray quickly reacts by throwing him on a table and killing him with the resulting glass shards. Then Gray takes Fisk's phone and finds a message from Aaron asking him to kill Gray. Hurt by this betrayal, Gray drives to Aaron's home and kills any guards he finds when he enters. When Gray finds his friend, Aaron says he didn't ask for Asha's death, but he's interrupted by Cortez's arrival. She tries to arrest Gray and Aaron warns her against it. But it's too late. Stem takes over and begins beating up Cortez. Gray can see Stem will kill her and fights against Stem's control, ignoring Stem's warning that trying to fight a powerful AI will fry his brain. Still stubborn, Gray takes out his knife and manages to stab his own hand before Stem takes control again and goes after Cortez, pinning her against the wall. Dark advises Cortez to utilize her taser and she does precisely that, figuring out how to get him off her. Aaron snatches a firearm from the floor and focuses it at Dim as he makes sense of he hasn't been in charge of his organization in years. It would seem when he designed Stem, the chip was savvy to the point that it assumed command of each and every part of Aaron's life since it needed to be human. Stem chose Gray as his host, and it's been guiding Gray through every step of the process. It put him in a bad situation to make him shut down the inputs, then it brought him here to kill Aaron and stop him from creating another Stem. At that moment, Stem's voice begins coming out of the house's speakers, admitting it wanted Gray's body so it could fully evolve and it was the one who hired the thugs. Aaron's amazed by Stem's ability to speak properly, but as soon as he turns around, Stem makes Gray kill him with the knife. Then Stem grabs a gun and tries to shoot Cortez, but Gray begins fighting for control again and causes his own hand to turn in order to end things for himself. After the bullet is shot, Gray is shocked to wake up in the hospital. His body is perfectly fine and Asha is there taking care of him, promising that he only had a bad dream. However, Cortez suddenly talks and it's revealed that Stem won the battle for control. The chip put Gray's consciousness in the fake world. Now Gray is happily living an illusion while Stem has the body it always wanted. Then, at that point, Stem kills Cortez and leaves the structure, prepared to find what it can do now that it's the ideal being. Thanks for watching video.